Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're making a bit of a shift. Last time we were really high level, thinking about the big existential questions around AGI, artificial general intelligence. Today we're bringing it right back down to earth. We're looking at the ethical and I guess legal challenges of AI that's already out there working right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how fast AI went from like a lab idea to something actually making huge decisions in our lives. We're
Right.
talking hiring, credit scores, even things like judicial risk assessments, predicting if someone might reoffend.
And that's really the heart of it for this deep dive. Our mission really is to try and figure out the moral limits. Where are the red lines for these algorithms? Can we actually set boundaries for code that's deciding these critical things? And maybe the scarier part, are these systems just sort of turbocharging existing societal biases, making
Yeah.
things worse, faster?
It's something we absolutely have to get a handle on because you've got this lack of transparency, right? Combined with biases hidden inside, it's creating real anxiety globally. So we need to unpack that algorithmic bias, tackle the whole black box problem everyone talks about, and look at how regulators, like in the EU, are trying to force some transparency.
Okay, great. Let's start right there with algorithmic bias. What's actually happening? How does a supposedly neutral bit of tech end up discriminating?
Well, the mechanism is actually quite simple, but the effects are huge. AI systems learn by finding patterns in data. So if the data you feed it reflects historical inequalities, maybe it's full of past sexism or racism or class bias, the AI doesn't just learn those things, it learns them and then it kind of systematizes them, builds them into its core logic.
Right, it's like holding up a flawed mirror. The AI sees the unfair history, thinks, okay, that's the rule, and then gets really good at replicating the flaw. The source material gives some really stark examples of this.
Oh, definitely. Think about, say, a big company's hiring algorithm.
Hmm.
Maybe it's trained on 20 years of data where, I don't know, 80% of the top hires were men. The system might just conclude, statistically, that being male predicts success. So it could start filtering out really qualified women based on tiny cues in their resumes, things like maybe going to an all-women's college or even just using certain words more associated with female applicants.
And the crucial point is the machine isn't trying to be sexist. It has no intent. But the data is biased, so you end up automating unfairness at a scale and speed humans just couldn't manage. We see this with credit scores too, right? And mortgages, even healthcare.
Exactly. Ethnic biases creeping into loan applications, things like that. And the danger is the AI makes it all seem objective, scientific even, when the outcome is fundamentally unfair.
Which leads us straight into that second big problem you mentioned, the black box. The fact that we often can't see why the AI made the decision it did.
Right, the black transparency.
Now, when we say black box, we don't just mean the code is secret, do we? It's more fundamental with these advanced deep learning models. For someone listening who isn't a data scientist, why can't we just look inside?
It really boils down to the sheer complexity. It's not like old school programming with clear if-then rules. Modern deep learning uses these vast networks, millions, maybe billions of connections nodes working together. They create these incredibly complicated nonlinear paths to get to an answer. So the network might correctly say, approve this loan or flag this image.
Yeah.
But tracing back exactly why through all those layers and calculations, even the engineers who built it often can't point to the specific reason. It's too distributed.
Wow. So if a bank turns down my loan application using one of these systems and I ask them why, they might genuinely not be able to tell me beyond the algorithm said no based on your data. They can't show the logical steps.
Often, that's exactly the case. They can show the inputs and the output, but not the reasoning in between. And that makes it incredibly hard to audit these systems after the fact, or to hold anyone legally accountable when things go wrong.
Which creates this massive accountability gap, you're saying.
Precisely. It's a real crisis, especially in high-stakes areas. Think about the justice system or security applications. This lack of transparency just isn't acceptable. And that's where this idea, this demand for a right to explanation comes from.
The right to explanation, meaning if an AI makes a big decision about your life, your job, your freedom, your finances, you should have the right to understand why. And we know this is vital. We've seen those cases in the US with systems like Compass used for predicting recidivism risk.
Yes, the Compass example is chilling. It was found to systematically give higher risk scores to black individuals compared to white individuals, even when their offenses and histories were similar.
That's automated unfairness, crystal clear.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it highlights the core ethical principle here. A system, no matter how efficient or accurate it seems, is unacceptable if it isn't fair. If a machine's decision impacts someone's liberty or opportunities, there absolutely has to be a way to challenge it, to understand the logic.
Okay, so the problems are clear. Bias, lack of transparency, accountability issues. Since this is global, the solutions probably need to be regulatory. Let's shift to the biggest attempt so far, the EU AI Act.
Right. This is really the first major global framework trying to get a grip on AI risks. And their approach is tiered based on potential harm. They've basically created categories: low risk, high risk, and what they call unacceptable risk.
Low risk sounds straightforward, maybe simple games, things with minimal impact, minimal rules there.
Exactly. But it's the jump to high risk where things get serious. That's where the heavy compliance comes in.
Which sectors fall into high risk? What kind of rules are we talking about?
It covers critical areas: healthcare AI, transport systems like self-driving tech, education tools, employment software like those hiring algorithms we mentioned, and justice system applications. If your AI falls into high risk, you're facing strict mandates, not suggestions, but requirements. Things like mandatory human oversight, incredibly detailed technical documentation, really strong data governance rules to try and catch bias, and even third-party audits before you can launch.
That sounds like a lot for companies to handle, especially smaller ones. A big cost, a lot of bureaucracy. But maybe the most interesting part is the unacceptable risk category. This is where they draw absolute lines, right? Total bans. What did the EU decide AI should never do?
They drew some very clear lines, grounded in fundamental rights and human dignity. For instance, they've completely banned AI-driven social scoring systems, the kind that rate citizens' trustworthiness based on their behavior. We've seen attempts at that elsewhere. They also banned certain uses of emotion recognition tech, especially in workplaces to monitor employee feelings or in public spaces for surveillance.
And the reasoning behind that is key, isn't it? It's not that these systems don't work necessarily, it's that they violate basic human rights.
That's exactly the point. Grading a citizen's worth or constantly monitoring their internal emotional state, the EU views that as fundamentally incompatible with human autonomy and dignity. It violates their standards for human rights.
So by banning these, they're making a statement. Some areas of human life are just off limits for algorithms, no matter how smart they get. It's humanity setting boundaries for its tool.
It is. It's a very deliberate ethical stance codified into law.
But, and this is always the case with regulation, there's a trade-off, isn't there? The act aims for safety and rights, but what are the criticisms about its impact on, say, innovation?
Yeah, that's the big debate. Critics argue these really strict rules, especially for high-risk AI, could seriously slow down innovation in Europe. Smaller companies, startups, they might struggle to afford the compliance costs, the audits, all the documentation. There's a real fear it could put the EU at a disadvantage compared to, say, the US or China, where the focus might be more on moving fast, perhaps with less upfront safety regulation.
It's that classic tension, speed versus security. Do you move fast and risk embedding flaws? Or do you move cautiously and potentially lose the race? Every region is grappling with this.
And that leads us to maybe the deepest challenge, legally speaking: the autonomous error. What happens when a truly autonomous system messes up? Who's responsible?
Right, this feels like a huge gap in our current legal thinking. If a fully self-driving car has an accident because of a complex decision it made on its own, who do you sue?
Yeah.
Our legal systems are built around finding a human agent, right? The driver who was negligent, the manufacturer who made a faulty part, the programmer who wrote bad code.
But that framework kind of breaks down when the decision is made by a complex, learning autonomous system.
So how do we bridge that gap? What are the legal minds proposing?
Well, one pretty radical idea being debated is granting certain advanced AI systems a form of electronic personality or e-personality.
Wait, like treating the AI itself as a legal entity, similar to how a corporation is a legal person.
Kind of, yeah. The goal isn't really philosophical, it's practical. It's about creating something that can be held liable. If the AI has e-personality, then maybe it, or the entity controlling it in this specific legal sense, could hold insurance, own assets to cover damages, and be the target of legal action. It's an attempt to shift the problem into the existing framework of law and risk management, rather than just ethics.
But that sounds incredibly complicated. Wouldn't that open a huge can of worms? If an AI has legal status, do we talk about its rights? How is it owned? It feels like a massive leap. What are the arguments against it?
The main pushback is about diluting human responsibility. Critics worry that giving AI legal personality might let the humans off the hook. the designers, the companies deploying it. It risks suggesting the AI has agency, which could absolve people of their ethical duties. Plus, a corporation ultimately has human owners and directors who oversees a truly autonomous AI.
Which brings us back to something crucial you mentioned earlier, and that the EU Act emphasizes the need for a human oversight layer.
Absolutely. We can't just rely on the law or expect the machines to police themselves. Especially for high-risk AI, there always needs to be a human involved somehow, whether it's a human in the loop making the final call, or at least a strong human oversight structure managing the system.
And that responsibility goes way beyond just coding, doesn't it?
Oh, much further. It's about choosing the right data in the first place, data that's fair, not just historical. And it requires continuous supervision after deployment. You have to keep checking that the algorithm isn't drifting into bias or making unintended mistakes.
So, tying this all together, what we've really explored is that setting ethical limits for AI isn't just an engineering puzzle. It's much bigger. It's like society engineering. It's about the lines we as humans decide to draw.
Exactly. We're at this really pivotal moment. We have a choice. Do we just chase efficiency, even if it means automating bias on a grand scale? Or do we make a conscious effort to weave together law, ethics, philosophy, and technology to make sure AI actually serves human values, human dignity? Ultimately, the moral compass for these incredibly smart machines, it's still got to be held in human hands.
Okay, so we've touched on the roots of bias in data, the challenge of the black box, the EU's attempt to draw regulatory lines, especially those unacceptable risks, and this complex legal puzzle of accountability, maybe even e-personality.
And thinking about that accountability piece, it leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you listening. If we're even discussing giving AI legal personality to hold it responsible, what happens when these systems become truly autonomous, making creative, self-directed decisions we never explicitly programmed? Where do the boundaries lie then? What new lines might you need to consider for these potentially highly autonomous AI agents?
Yeah, and maybe bring it closer to home. As you use AI tools every day, your phone's assistant, the algorithms recommending content, maybe more complex systems at work or in finance. What are your personal red lines? How much autonomy are you comfortable giving them? Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.